So former RBA coach George Karl, the man with two first names. It appears as though George Karl has been deep frying LeBron James like some catfish for quite some time now. And oh Lord, have they dug back into the crates of an old verbal spanking that George Karl gave to LeBron James years ago. I'm talking about putting belt to hind parts, ladies and gentlemen, belt to hind parts. They done dug LeBron James' skeleton out the grave, then buried this man again. George Karl goes boogeyman on LeBron James. George Karl steps on the cockroach James. He goes 21 Savage on LeBron James. Real deal stepper, put my toe on that boy, okay? But former RBA coach George Karl once criticized LeBron James for being the weak, overrated jump shooter that he is. But here's what George Karl had to say. This article is per basketballnetwork.net via MSN Sports, and the headline reads, "He is not a natural jump shooter," end quote, when George Karl criticized LeBron James' shooting and lack of clutch. The article goes on to say, one of the things George Karl is known for is his penchant for sharing his unfiltered thoughts on certain issues in the RBA. During an interview back with Jim Rome in 2012, Coach Karl assessed LeBron James' shooting and unsurprisingly came up with an intriguing conclusion. According to Karl, James wasn't like most RBA superstars who were gifted with the reliable and consistent jump shot. For the veteran coach, it's also the reason why LeBron's form and moves weren't sexy. Moreover, Karl also criticized James' ability to take the big shot of the game. He broke down James' approach on scoring and ultimately reckoned that he had no clutch game at all. George Karl went on to say, quote, "He's not a natural jump shooter," Karl said of James' game. He goes on to say, quote, "He's kind of a self-made jump shooter. He makes the ball go in, the ball goes in, but it's not pretty. His balance isn't perfect. It's not going to look like Kevin Durant or Ray Allen. It goes in, but at the end of the game, that extra special player." He goes on to say, quote, "Sometimes I don't know if he trusts his jump shot," Karl added. "He needs to get to the rim. If you take away the rim, he's probably going to pass the ball more often than not," end quote. LeBron James would have never been able to survive being coached by a coach like George Karl. George Karl is very unfiltered and he's going to speak his mind. LeBron James can't handle being around coaches such as the George Karl or someone who's very transparent and going to tell him what he needs to hear. And LeBron James doesn't trust his jump shot because LeBron James never perfected and worked on his jump shot. But George Karl isn't saying anything no different from what us unbiased people have been saying about LeBron James, who has been assessing his game for years. LeBron James is most fearful of driving to the rim down the stretch of games in the fourth quarter because that is the pressure defining moments. He can get away with it during the first three quarters and mask it a little better because he's padding his stats and he's passing the ball solely to make his numbers look good. But here's where the problem lies. The media, they try to cover up LeBron James choking or turning the ball over in the fourth quarter when it matters most, and then they'll shift the blame over to his teammates. But yes, they're right. Nothing about LeBron James' game is sexy. What about LeBron James would make you think anything's sexy? Ew. It's the opposite of sexy. It's unattractive. So unattractive, LeBron James should be the only player that's blurred out on TV during games. That's how ugly his game is. Now, everybody always seem to criticize Draymond Green's shooting form or their clown or make jokes about Sean Marion's shooting form, but I must say, I think LeBron James has one of the worst shooting forms in RBA history. I mean, I've never seen a player lean backwards and take a jump shot. LeBron James' shooting form is doing the codeine lean. LeBron James' shooting form is doing the lean on me. Lean on me. We are not strong. And I'll need a friend, somebody to lean on. LeBron James' jumper is doing the shoulder lean, the shoulder lean, the shoulder lean. His jump shot is doing the Fat Joe lean back. LeBron James' jump shot is doing the Shamar. You better clock that T, clock it. But all jokes aside, I'm really perplexed at how LeBron James could ever be considered the GOAT while being a below average jump shooter. And these are the facts. LeBron James is in the history books for having the most missed three-point shots in NBA history. Let's put this all into perspective. LeBron James has the most missed shots in NBA history, has no bag, most turnovers in NBA history, no great ball handling skills, he's a trash defender, and he has the most finals losses in NBA history. Yet, he's considered top 2, supposedly in the conversation with Michael Jordan. I mean, what a joke. But it's actually not surprising to me at all that years later, George Karl's statement still stands true. George Karl is right. LeBron James is not a natural shooter like a Kevin Durant or a Steph Curry. He's not a natural shooter like a Ray Allen, who saved his career, by the way, by hitting that clutch three-point shot against the San Antonio Spurs, which saved LeBron James' legacy. He don't have a natural jump shot like a Kobe Bryant or a Michael Jordan. LeBron James' numbers and his shooting percentage wasn't better because he took less shots. It's because he was afraid of taking more shots because he knew he would have missed them. But yes, LeBron James is an unnatural shooter. And you know what's a coincidence? Because LeBron James, his muscles are unnatural as well, allegedly. Because LeBron James is on PEDs, allegedly, on steroids, allegedly. LeBron James' muscles are so fake, he uses the same pump that you use to put air in your tires when they go flat. That's what LeBron James uses to pump up his muscles, allegedly. LeBron James will never be a better jump shooter than Kyrie Irving, who saved his legacy and helped him win his 3rd championship in the 2016 NBA Finals. But when George Karl explained LeBron James' game and how LeBron James has to get to the rim, and if you take that away from him, you take away his left hand, take away him being able to get to the rim, he's more than likely going to pass the ball. And this is why LeBron James despised Kobe Bryant. See, Kobe Bryant once had a show breaking down players' games, and he exposed in one episode how LeBron James doesn't like going right because LeBron James is left-handed. And this is how Kawhi Leonard and other players were able to shut down LeBron James and lock him up, because Kobe Bryant knew LeBron James's weaknesses and he exposed it to the world. However, the Bronsexuals confuse this with hating. Or when LeBron James drives down the lane and pass the ball with the clock winding down, they say that LeBron James is making the clutch pass and that he's not afraid, when in reality, he's just choking and he passes the ball so he can avoid blame. But LeBron James just has too many flaws in his game. He has too many weaknesses, too many holes in his game. And that's why he can never be the greatest.